Hello everybody. So today I thought we'd talk a bit about Manifest v3. So there's been this big panic recently among a bunch of people, mostly people like myself who use uBlock Origin, about Manifest v3, which is a new standard of extensions, or a new sort of standardization of the API for plugins and what they can use for Chromium-based browsers. And it defines exactly what functions are available and how a plugin must be formatted, and etc. and etc. And essentially it's just an upgrade to the standard, but Google has taken the decision to remove some key APIs that, for instance, uBlock Origin and most ad blockers rely on in order to edit DOM content. And so I couldn't help but be reminded, when I was reading all of this, about something that Linus Sebastian said not so long ago. You can see it's signed LS, I'm assuming that stands for Linus Sebastian here, where he said, "Online websites and creators are supported by ads." I thought that was pretty common knowledge. Ad blocking is literally the same thing as privacy, literally the exact same thing. People will still do it, and it's been guilty of at times. I've been guilty of it at times, but we still just need to be aware of the impact. I don't agree with the way this has been phrased, but honestly, I think there's a lot more to this than people are giving it credit for. Linus here has stated something that is actually verifiably correct. People would rather watch advertisements than have to pay outright for the thing that they are watching. This has been proven again and again. Yet, there's more to this on the other side as well. And so, I'm still on the fence about this. Now, as I said a second ago, I do use an advertisement blocker. I use uBlock Origin with pretty much all of the filter lists enabled, and a bunch of other ones as well, like cookie pop-up blockers for stupid EU laws that they've made. But I generally only do this because I got driven over the edge by the horrible, horrible advertisements that I was getting served. I was getting served absolute garbage, nothing interesting at all, but more importantly as well, they were taking over the internet as I knew it. And so I'd like to show some advertisements today. So I've just done a quick search, ratatouille recipe. So let's go to tasty.co, the first website. I'm doing this in a private window because it disables, and it doesn't actually, so I'm going to disable this in private windows, so manage it, and then disable it in private windows. Then I'm going to have to restart this, so save my search term because I can't spell ratatouille, and then search for it yet again, and let's go to tasty.co and see what we get. So you can see that the page is still loading, it's continuously loading, and as I scroll down here, so first of all we got a massive full screen pop-up, and to be fair, this is one of these annoying cookie pop-ups, so let's disagree. But as we scroll down the page, we've got a bunch of videos popping up, and we've got things moving across the screen, and to be fair, this hasn't got many advertisements on this one specifically, but my general experience when browsing the internet nowadays is essentially that as I move down the page, we have advertisement upon advertisement heaping itself onto the page, and attempting to take over the main content of the page. Because in my opinion, what Linus has missed here is the fact that the advertising business is a business too. It is not an obligation. Advertising came with the sort of implicit assumption that they had one thing to do, and they were then going to get out of your way once they had done it. Advertisement has become incredibly intrusive, and it's become something that is taking over the actual main purpose of you viewing the internet. When you view the internet, you don't do it so you can watch advertisements. And so the fact that so many people are turning to advertisement blocking shows the fact that the advertising industry has failed. It does not show the fact that the user base is greedy. I'm still trying to find a good example here, because it seems that somehow this is a good example of something else that annoys me, pop-ups for things like this. But it's websites that are sort of the top ranked in Google search results that generally seem to pop up the most when you search around. So all of these cooking websites seem to be hilariously bad examples. I seem to have picked the lightest cooking websites on the planet, but my general experience on browsing the web nowadays is that it's almost impossible to do, especially on my lower powered laptops that I've had since 2011, because advertisement takes up so much of my CPU time and so much of my screen space that I can't read what's actually there. You'll never have the horrible experience of trying to read some technical manual on a website, that the only website that still hosts PDF for old Texas Instruments stuff, the old like data sheets for TI components, and then have some full-page pornography ad pop up in the middle of your screen and not being able to read it. Even worse, having this happen while someone's looking over your shoulder, for instance. Advertising has completely failed at its job to be non-intrusive, and that's terrible. So, I've got something else up here as an example, and so this is the 4chan advertisement guidelines. And all of this is something that essentially is designed to make it so that the website is still usable even when it has advertisement placed on it. And you can see that clearly it's not going to be a non-profitable thing. If you place a good advertisement for a good product on here, people are actually going to click on it. And so we've said that, you know, no creatives imitating video players, close or cancel buttons, or download buttons, or antivirus alerts, you know, the classic scams on download websites. The landing page must match the ad content. That's another classic one. You click on some random thing and it's different to what you expected to click on. Redirects, pop-up loops, malware, things like that. 90% of the time, if I click on a Google ad double-click link, it takes me through either some infinite redirect loop, it redirects me through 4 different tracking servers before I get to the actual thing that I want to try and get to, and or it will never actually get me to the place it wants to in the first place, or it takes me to malware, just straight up starts downloading a sketchy zip file. You know, this is why people don't want to see advertisements, because it's turned so bad. And so what Linus has ignored here is part of the fact that the advertising industry is failing. It is not just the user's fault. Now, obviously, he's talking a little bit about sort of sponsored segments as well. Now, there's actually a podcast that I like to listen to quite often called Hacking Humans Cyberwire. And this is quite a good podcast. It's hosted by 2 blokes called Dave Bittner and Joe Carrigan. And for some reason, my internet always fails when I'm recording. But anyway, it was these 2 blokes here. And this podcast is really cool, and I really like listening to it. But it has sponsored segments on it. But I have no problem with this at all, because the sponsored segments are actually high quality. They're actually enjoyable to listen to, they fit smoothly into the rest of the content of the podcast, and often they're also on a rota, so they're rotated, so it's not the same thing every week. And on the main podcast as well, on the main Cyberwire daily, you get other advertisements as well, the daily rotated advertisements. And these things actually tell you about interesting products that you might actually be interested in, and more importantly, why they are good. In the modern day, when is the last time that you could say that you saw a Google ad and you thought, oh, that looks like a good product? I think that probably the last time that happened to me was legitimately over a decade ago. If that. These advertisements are completely failing at their entire purpose. And so that is where this argument for me falls down. The advertising industry got too greedy, and they're now sacrificing the entire purpose of the web, which is to be a distributed content delivery network, essentially. And so they're attempting to instead inject it and turn it into essentially a profit extraction framework. You're supposed to be there to assist in being able to fund the whole infrastructure. You're not supposed to be there so that you can exploit something that there are lots of people using to make massive profits. I understand where LTT is coming from. I haven't watched this channel in many years now. It just seems to have fallen into the mixed bag with sort of Jay's 2 cents and a bunch of other people that I used to watch when I was younger, and I find it interesting anymore. That really, they're very corporate, but that's alright, they make interesting stuff. But really, we know, Linus, that you make most of the money from embedded things in the video anyway. But like I was saying about Hacking Humans, I would have no problem with it if it actually fit well and sort of smoothly integrated with the rest of it. Instead, what it actually is you talking extremely quickly at the camera whilst barely stringing together coherent sentences about a scammy VPN service that you're not fairly representing, and that you're agreeing to advertise in the video with incorrect information in it. VPN advertisements are quite notorious for peddling incorrect information about their actual purpose, but I have yet to see an embedded VPN advertisement that has actually really explained to people what a VPN is for. Essentially, the only purposes for a VPN is to use as a proxy when you don't want to have your traffic between the proxy eavesdropped on. And so, if you're using a VPN for privacy, that's not a particularly good idea. You could argue that you get lost in the sort of flood of people all using the same VPN server, but this argument completely crashes when VPN providers then start providing more and more of these servers closer to your geographic location, and then the whole entire purpose just falls down. For me, the only purpose of using a VPN in the modern day is literally just to access geo-blocked content, and that's it. And even then, there are still ways you can get around that without actually having to do this. In fact, I have found some websites that do geo-blocking because of quote-unquote GDPR reasons. You can get around it by just disabling IPv4 and forcing an IPv6 connection. These people have no idea what they're doing if they do things like this IP geo-blocking. But I thought that I'd share 2 cents on this subject, because just to sum up the big rant about this, essentially Linus is right, but he's wrong in the fact that we don't block advertisements because we're just nepotistic or greedy, or because we hate him making money, or because we hate people who make things for us, or because we're so selfish that we can't watch a 3-second clip of a new Pixel phone that we're not going to buy anyway, so that we can watch the 5-minute clickbaity video he's put together. What we instead are doing is we're attempting to block things that are ruining our overall experience of using the internet, because a few greedy corporations and greedy corporate representatives like the Linus Tech Tips channel have ended up injecting our experience with horrible, horrifyingly ruinous advertisements that are not designed to integrate with the page, and are instead designed seemingly to make our experience worse. If we look at these guidelines again, we can see they must be of acceptable quality, and they have to fit into the specific ad unit. The website is designed very specifically that it fits into a specific location on the page. It's not a prominent location, but it could be more prominent, and I wouldn't even care, because it fits into a specific box on the page where I know it's an advertisement. Think about a newspaper. Newspaper advertisements, they're still sort of invading their way into the rest of the content of the newspaper, but they're clearly marked, your eyes can easily skip over them, and it does not intrude on the rest of the content of the page. Whereas in the modern web, because all of these advertisements are using terrible JavaScript frameworks, as you've got to track the number of times it's loaded and track users to hell and back, they get loaded asynchronously by 10 megabytes of JavaScript every load. So when I try to scroll down the simple cooking website I tried to get to, my scroll keeps getting locked at some random place on the page because 10 advertisements were needed to load so they can fund their 50p per month VPS hosting. So, at the end of the day, do I agree that ad blocking is literally piracy? Not really. Because of the truth of the matter that embedded segments are where most of the revenue comes from, but also the fact that if you want us to start watching advertisements again, then you'd better make the advertisements better. This is essentially market forces at play. People would not be blocking advertisements if the advertisements were not of zero value to them. The whole initial idea behind advertisements was to use the balance of market forces to make it so that we can make money out of trying to make money. And that's the whole point of markup and profits, isn't it? Making money by making money out of making money. Or it's confusingly phrased, but the whole point of trying an advertisement is trying to be helpful to the consumer whilst also making a profit, and that's entirely what modern advertisers have failed at. So that's my opinion on this whole Manifest v3 thing. Yes, it's clearly some Google conspiracy to shut down ad blockers. I think that's pretty clear, but the reason they're doing it is because they don't want to have to change their terrible Google double-click business model, because they have no guidelines whatsoever over where you're allowed to put the double-click iframe, so you could literally just make your entire site 10 double-click iframes and make, I don't know, $50 every time someone clicks on your scammy link on the Google search rankings. This has gone on for too long already. This is my opinion. ad blocking is not piracy, but we wouldn't have to do it if you guys hadn't so utterly failed at your task.